Thank you for joining us today for a public briefing on the report that was just released titled Data Science for Undergraduates, Opportunities and Options. You can now download a copy of the report and other supporting materials at the National Academies Press website, www.nap.edu. For those of you not familiar with the U.S. National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, we are private nonprofit institutions that provide independent, objective analysis and advice to the U.S. to solve complex problems and inform public policy decisions related to science, technology, and medicine. The academies operate under a congressional charter to the National Academy of Sciences that was signed by President Lincoln in 1863. For each requested study, panel members are chosen for their expertise and experience and serve pro bono to carry out the study statement of task. The reports that result from the study represent the consensus view of the committee and must undergo external peer review before they are released, as did this report. I have with me co-chairs of the committee to discuss the findings and recommendations from the report. But before I introduce them, I want to go over a few technical reminders. After the presentation, we will begin to take questions through the Q&A box located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type your question in the box at any time and click Submit. We ask that you leave the box set to send your questions to all panelists and that you identify yourself and your organization when asking a question. If you have any technical issues during the event, please contact WebEx Technical Support at 1-866-229-3239. Once again, the number for WebEx Technical Support is 1-866-229-3239. Now I would like to introduce the co-chairs of the committee who are here with us today. Laura Haas, Dean of the College of Information and Computer Sciences at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and Alfred Hero, John H. Holland, Distinguished University Professor of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. We'll start off with a presentation about the report from the co-chairs and then open it up for questions. Please note that this briefing is scheduled to last 1 hour unless we run out of questions beforehand. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Hero.
Hello. I'm happy to be starting this development of the report that came out of a study entitled Envisioning the Data Science Discipline, the Undergraduate Perspective. So the committee was charged with exploring key questions about the future of the field of data science and focusing on options and opportunities in data science for undergraduates, which is interpreted in a large sense of undergraduates from everywhere, from community colleges to four-year and Research One universities, including continuing education after the fact of getting an undergraduate degree. So the report consists of many findings and recommendations and supporting data, and that's, I think, going to be of value to people who are interested in both evaluating this present state of data science undergraduate education in the U.S., in addition to those who are considering putting together their own programs at their institutions. The efforts were really organized into several thrusts, starting with what data science professionals will need to know, how they can be educated to acquire this knowledge, what institutional barriers might exist at educational institutions and how to overcome them, and then how to evolve the current data science educational programs and curricula into the future. I'll start by describing sort of an overview of how we came to this report. Envisioning, of course, of any discipline, and especially a discipline that's evolving so quickly as data science, is difficult. but one thing is very clear, and that is that data literacy, or what we are calling in the report data acumen, which you'll hear about in a few minutes, is emerging as a very important skill that's going to be needed by almost everybody in the future workforce in this evolving information economy, where people will need to understand the entire life cycle of data, from collection to management to analysis, interpretation, dissemination, communication, and ethics, and so forth. So thus, we explored in this study necessary data skills that students need to be taught in order to be effective in the future workforce, and in addition to ways that the academic institutions and other institutions can structure data science programs. Before starting to discuss the findings of the report, we want to discuss a little bit of what went into preparing the report, including how the committee organized the study, some of the inputs and some of the evidence that was gathered to support the conclusions. And so we started as a committee our first meeting in December of 2016 and held several meetings, both face-to-face and telecom, representing various aspects of data science with invitees to these meetings that were highly representative of the different stakeholders in data science education and in the primary beneficiaries of students in data science in industry and interested in workforce issues. So one of these meetings, out of these meetings, I should say, we came in an interim report, which was released in September 2017, and a webinar series that followed that report that gathered additional information that was deemed to be important to broaden our spectrum of inputs, if you like, that would form the primary fodder and evidence to go into our final report. And then on today, of course, our final report is released. So if you look at the committee, this is the committee that both Laura and I have had the pleasure of working with. You can see that it's a mix of people from both public and private universities and colleges, from industry, from foundations. So it really represents a mix of experiences and perspectives from computer science to statistics to engineering to liberal arts and humanities, which we feel gave us the opportunity to take a very broad and visionary view of data science, both as it currently stands in academic institutions and where it might evolve into the future. So supporting this committee, we had a superb staff from the National Academies who were instrumental in organizing the committee's activities from 4 different groups within the academies, representing computer science, statistics, mathematical sciences, and education, and Michelle Schwadley in particular, study director, who was very, as I say, instrumental in pulling this report together and helping us organize our study. So let me talk a little bit about the interim report, as it sort of represents a stepping stone on the way to what you see in the final report. And this interim report has been available since September. This interim report was issued to represent some of the findings that emerged from the study up to that point. And much of the report consists of questions and findings that led to those questions that circulated around what the foundational skills and translational skills and ethical skills, professional skills that were the most potentially useful for students who were seeking to get training or education of a broader or deeper level in data science in order to join the workforce, and how that might evolve into the future. And so one of the main foci of our study was broad participation, because it became very clear as we started to talk together about data science and the transformative nature of the data science knowledge and acumen in terms of employability and impact of a person in the future workforce, that we needed to draw from a very broad, a much broader participation than the usual suspects from computer science, statistics, information sciences, mathematics, to form, the next generation of students who have the literacy and acumen and acuity in data science to be effective. And so we, in the interim report, talked about various constituencies that represent different geographical, demographic, interest groups, and various identity groups that would potentially be very interested in a data science degree or data science educational curriculum that would not be as narrow as, say, a computer science degree or a statistics degree in terms of the types of very pointed training and education that those two existing degrees provided. We ended this interim report with a few reflections, principally on the need for ethical training for data scientists that led to a first draft of a code of ethics for data scientists, but it was modeled along the Hippocratic Oath that physicians take in entering the medical workforce, because of this emerging realization that data science is has this potential to affect the economy, health, and personal lives in a positive way, but can also have intended or unintended consequences that raise a lot of ethical issues in terms of fairness and violation of privacy and so forth. So that then was the jumping point to seek an even broader set of inputs through a set of focused webinars that there were 9 of them that were organized by the National Academies, moderated by one of the committee members. I think there were 4 or 5 committee members involved total in moderating each one of these. And I'm not going to go through all of these webinars. They're available on the website. They cover a very broad spectrum of areas that came out of the interim report in terms of questions and issues that we wanted further insight in, and so you can peruse these webinars at your own leisure. So I think I'll now pass it on to Laura. I think you are going to talk about the next few slides.
Right. Thank you, Al. I wanted to give people a sort of a high-level view of the report, and then Al and I will drill into the findings and recommendations in more depth. So what you're seeing here is an outline of the final report, and I won't go through this in too much depth because there'll be a lot more coming, but just to tell you, in the introduction, because this report was about envisioning, we tried to take a view of what we thought the future would look like, an ideal future, almost a utopian one, in which data science was just part of the fabric of society, and really try to think about how would we have to educate students to get to that future. The second chapter looks at, well, okay, so what would these future data scientists need to know? What do they tend to know today? What will they need to know tomorrow? And what will they do with this data science? What are their roles or personas going to be? In the third chapter, we did a fairly extensive look at what's going on in data science education today, and I expect this will be a very interesting chapter. It gathered up a lot of the different pathways, a lot of the different modalities for how some of this education is being delivered today. It looked a little bit at what do we need to do at earlier levels in the educational pipeline to get people ready for this undergraduate education. Chapter 4, though, acknowledged that a lot of places are just beginning their journey with data science. And so in that chapter, we tried to drill into some of the issues that we want, that we're going to need as an educational community to be thinking about as we try and prepare and start up these programs. Whether it's ensuring broad participation, to how we're going to organize ourselves to deliver this instruction, so the academic organization or infrastructure, what should the curriculum considerations be, where on earth are we going to get the faculty to teach these things, and how are we going to assess our success in this area. And then, of course, because this is in its infancy and we're just talking about how to start programs, we have to acknowledge that they're going to evolve, and they're probably going to evolve in ways that none of us really can predict, even though we spent quite a bit of time trying to envision that. And so we talk in Chapter 5 about evolution and evaluation and how those go hand in hand in helping us shape and move towards this future. And then, of course, there's the usual sorts of things that you would expect in terms of conclusions and appendices. Just to re-echo what Al talked about at the back, you can see our version, our actually evolved version of what we think a data science oath might be. We're not recommending the adoption of that oath, but we thought it really helped to bring attention to who was to kind of the issues that we need to care about and inculcate in our students. So a few words about the report, and then a few words about what we learned in the process about data science, or what we took away for that. The report itself, you know, as Al and I have both said, envisioning the future is a little hard. We took this sort of utopian point of view in which every student would know some basics of data science, some modicum of this magic thing that we're going to talk about, I promise, called data acumen. And in this world, data science jobs will be everywhere, not just in all industries and all geographies, because you can argue that even today they're starting to appear there, but really at all levels of positions and throughout organizations and institutions. And of course, this utopian future, data scientists would be diverse demographically, as well as educationally. That is, we would like to see all groups of society have their share of these data science jobs and be able to come at them from different domains and at all the different degree levels that we see today. So as I said, a little utopian, but that seemed to us the best way to motivate where we were going to go. We think this report will be very highly referenced. You can excuse me if we pat ourselves on the back there, but one of the things the committee did really nicely was to really delve into what are the competencies that are needed, and then to gather up many, many examples of programs and provide references and citations to many of them. So for those of you who are thinking of launching a program or who are in the midst of a journey and want to know what some of the best practices are, or even just, you know, see the breadth of that, the report has a lot of detail in it that I think will be very valuable. Our recommendations you will see in a few minutes, but they have to reflect the fact that the data science world is changing quickly and the educational landscape will evolve quickly. So they tend to be perhaps a little less specific than more stay limber, stay nimble because of that sort of change. So the report had to try and recognize that. So about data science in general, clearly we're in the infancy. It's just starting to take shape. There's still arguments about definition. You can see 70 different versions of Venn diagrams online trying to map data science to various fields. And so that's natural. That's a healthy beginning. That's one aspect of what made our task hard. A second one is that there will continue to be, and there are today, many different types of data science roles, and often emphasizing very different skills, from the sort of almost operational roles where people are just getting the data into the pipelines, all-important step, or managing it in some ways, to the very front-end facing roles where you're really a business person trying to consume data, make a story out of it, and present it in your field or to your executive board or to whoever is going to be the end consumer. And those require some of the same fundamental understandings, but also vastly different skills. And so that was another challenge for this study. Then data science itself is emerging as a unique field that, although it borrows heavily from multiple other fields, is definitely, we felt in the committee, going to be distinct. And that should mean that a major or a minor or a certificate in data science should not be the same thing as a degree in statistics or a degree in computer science, to take two fields that are very active in this formation of that. That also means that because it's emerging as a distinct field, we don't have an existing body of faculty, obviously, to go and do this, and so we go and teach this. And so we need to have educational opportunities to expose faculty to the different perspectives and the different pieces of this field, to start to educate the faculty at the same time as we're trying to educate the students. And to help with that and to help this emergence across really the world, there needs to be a lot of ways to share educational resources, whether it's course materials or whatever, because we can't just each evolve this individually. It will move too slowly. The field will evolve beyond us. The other thing we sort of felt in all our discussions is that there are a lot of professional societies today, just as there are a lot of fields that have some bearing on this emerging discipline, and that there is clearly a role that professional societies can usefully provide to support the evolution of this undergraduate data science experience, as well as the evolution of the field. And then just a few thoughts on the undergraduate data science piece. That was clearly that education, as the field evolves, the education will have to evolve, whether that's at graduate levels or undergraduate, at community college, two-year college levels, or 4 years, or prestigious, big, huge universities. We're going to have to keep evolving. And that means that there are going to have to be many different pathways for undergraduates. For a while, people will keep coming at this from all different kinds of preparation, and we think that's actually a virtue and a good thing. We think that we can leverage the idea that there have to be these multiple pathways to allow us to promote both this demographic and the intellectual diversity that we are aspiring to in this utopian view. But having said all that, despite all these many pathways and many different experiences that one can hope to provide, there are some core competencies that we hope that all data science students and ideally all undergraduates should have. And again, they should develop some understanding of how to think about data, some notion of what goes into a data analysis and what their responsibilities as consumers of data need to be. And they should also very clearly get some exposure to ethical problem solving. That's a key component of what we're calling data acumen, and it's going to be very important because, as we all know, data is tricky stuff, and it is really easy if you are not trained in thinking about how to think about the ethical implications, to just make mistakes that can, in major ways, affect people's lives. I think that's how we ended up at this Hippocratic Oath, is this notion that in some sense data science in the future can do also a huge amount of harm if misused. And so we want to see if we can't really emphasize, we really can't emphasize enough how important this notion of ethical problem solving will be. And finally, we really found that, as we thought about it, that the evaluation of programs was going to be critical, that we needed, as we were designing these programs and rolling them out, to be thinking about how to evaluate them so that we can ensure the programs evolve as the field evolves and as the demands of employers and the workplace evolves, so that we can understand what is working well and what is not working as well, and continue to improve our programs in this rapidly changing world. So with that, we're going to switch to a mode where we go through the findings and the recommendations, and I guess we're going to have to go pretty fast, Al. We want to leave time for questions, but at least we can sort of put them up and highlight a few little bits of them, and Al and I will take turns in doing that. So Al, I'm handing it over to you.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Laura. So we organized these findings by chapters of the report, and they're exhaustively listed here. The punchlines are highlighted in blue, so I'm not going to read these findings to you, but I'm just going to outline on this particular set of findings the recommendations that data science, being a new field that has such a transformative potential, should be embraced by educational institutions. And bearing in mind that there are diverse pathways to the data science educational outcome that's desirable in terms of workforce development and graduate school, that there's a need to develop mechanisms to develop faculty that is recruiting new faculty and also encouraging existing faculty to develop new curricula and new courses that are adapted to these pathways. And the main point here is that the typical data science graduate today is trained in one of the traditional fields, statistics or computer science or engineering, informatics, bioinformatics, and so forth, and that there's really a need in terms of the demand for people who have integrated skills that cut across these fields. And for example, somebody who wants to enter the world of infotech, who at the same time needs to know how to design an A/B test or a regression, and that they'll get from a statistical component of data science education. But they also may need to know how to efficiently scrape the web and, say, develop advanced visualization tools that might come out of a CS or informatics training, and then communication to a domain specialist that requires training at the interstitial connectors between the foundational and methodological areas of statistics and computer science. So that's the first recommendation on embracing data science as a new field and providing an evolving range of educational pathways at the academic institution level. So this is really talking about investment. Laura?
Yep, next. So this is this central finding here is our definition of data acumen. And again, in the interest of time, I won't go through everything, but I will just make sure that everybody has a chance to absorb the set of areas and competencies that we found important across the committee, not just the mathematical and computational foundations, the statistical foundations, but a lot about data management and curation, about how do you describe and visualize data, how do you model it and assess it, assess quality, for example. What do the data workflows look like? Can you reproduce them? Can you do the same analysis multiple times? Understanding what that means is really important. And then, of course, there are a set of skills that are going to be critical around communication and teamwork. One of the things that we understood from this, from our work together, is that this is not going to be a one person sitting in a room sort of working experience for most of our graduates. That is, most of them will go in and join teams. They may become specialized in terms of what they do, but they will need to work across the team and with the consumers of the analyses that they will be doing. And so we think it's really important to stress those aspects. And then it's also important to note that while there is certainly a lot of science that is abstract and broad and cross-domain, there are, for many domains, some very specific considerations, from understanding the types of data. For example, biology data is very different than history data. So being able to get people enough or teach them what to look for, how to learn, so that they can walk into different domains, that's going to be an important piece. Over time, as the field evolves, understanding what are the cross-domain versus domain-specific considerations that need to be taught is also going to be key. And then I think I already beat the ethical problem-solving drum. In this chapter, in Chapter 2, you will find a lot more on each of these points that can explain what we were thinking, where this is coming from, and what are the types of elements that we would hope to find in a curriculum, starting from not just you know, not a series of courses. This is not saying you should have separate courses necessarily in each of these areas. In fact, ideally, a first introduction to data science course would give you a sense of all of these, and that a lot of these ideas would come up over and over throughout the undergraduate education. Back to you, Al.
Great, thank you. These are 3 more recommendations which expand on the themes that Laura was just mentioning. The first recommendation really addresses the broader issue of, you know, what are the basic data science understandings that we want all of our undergraduates, not just the ones that are in data science tracks, but all undergraduates to know. So this is basically is a statement about what the committee thinks are needs for foundational sort of data literacy, the minimal requirements for training undergraduates to become responsible citizens when they're engaging with data. So evidence-based reasoning and interpretation of visual data, graphs and curves, how to recognize when data is insufficient to support a conclusion, issues that might involve algorithmic bias, or recognizing when data is not quite right, without perhaps you know, being an expert in any particular component of the data science pipeline or the life cycle of data, but have this sort of general level of understanding. Their recommendation basically is that academic institutions should be convening their faculty to develop a coherent strategy for imparting basic understanding of data science to all undergraduates. And then the 2 other recommendations, 2.4 and 2.5, address the same ethics issue that we've brought to fore now at least twice. The 2.4 is emphasizing the need for continuous exposure to ethics throughout the curriculum, not just a single course that is designed to sort of give students a very generic and general understanding, but understanding of ethics in context that's taught and woven into the data science curriculum throughout. And then a recommendation 2.5 is simply that in collaboration with professional societies that can calibrate with workforce requirements and ethical standards within the national scope of the workforce, that universities should be developing codes of ethics for the data science community cooperatively, right, across the nation. So you can now take over for the next one, Laura.
Okay, so I get to do all of Chapter 3 in one chart, and that should not be. I don't want to underweight Chapter 3. It's just a very hard one to brief out by its findings and recommendations, because, in fact, this is the chapter that has a lot of examples of undergraduate education, how it's being delivered today, and so on. So I think you'll find this a really interesting one to read. But the basic finding here is just that undergraduate education in data science today can be experienced in many forms, and frankly, we don't think these are going to go away. You can see some of the major forms that it's appearing in today listed there. And the only recommendation out of that chapter was that, after observing all these different kinds of programs and giving examples of each, was that it really is useful to have a forum for dialogue across institutions, both 4-year and 2-year, on how we are going to keep evolving this undergraduate education and preparing students for the workforce. So I think I'll leave it at that and turn it back to you, Al.
Right. So Chapter 4 is looking at issues, opportunities, and barriers to starting data science programs within academic institutions, both at the community college and four-year college and Research One University. And so the recommendation 4.1, which is the main point here, is that data science programs, as they're developed in an academic context, should really have a focus on attracting students with a much more varied background. I've made that point once before, but now it's informalized in a recommendation, which I was referring to obliquely in my previous comments. Because of the students that enter the university from various pathways or various, backgrounds and experience levels, including underrepresented minorities and women, that there's the awakening of interest in data science may not occur in a math course or a computer science course on data structures or a statistics course on applied regression. It may occur, that awakening of interest may occur in the context of applications that are the most motivating for such non-traditional students who may not yet have a awakening of their STEM potential. And those might be in history or psychology or women's studies or in law school or what have you. And so this recommendation really is a call for universities to be much broader in their thinking in terms of not just sort of patching together from existing disciplinary foundational methodological threads in this pipelining of data science education through statistics or computer science or information sciences, but rather to develop new and bold initiatives that can bring people into data science through a variety of pathways. And so one of the analogies that's made in this report is the watershed as opposed to the pipeline model. The watershed model, which allows a much larger spectrum of students to enter into the field and become engaged and interested. The only thing I'll talk about before leaving this slide is the last finding, which is the recent shift to cloud-based platforms, availability of data and software and materials, Jupyter Pi notebooks and so forth. Actually, I think could make life a lot easier for institutions who want to put together broad-based data science programs, because you're not alone, and there's already a lot of materials that are up there that are shareable, and there should be more, and that's another finding, another recommendation that's coming up. But this makes this economics of cloud-based platforms that can reduce the cost of developing programs for institutions that may not have the capacity to build, a completely new, say, thrust within data science, is an enabler. So, Laura, you can take the next one.
Sure. So, as I said, Chapter 5 was about evolution and evaluation, and what the first finding highlights is that it's more than just the newness of the field and the evolving nature of what's going on, how people are experimenting with programs that's driving the need for evolution, but also the fact that every institution has its own pedagogical style, it has its own set of students with different backgrounds and goals, and they serve often very different portions of the job market or different sorts of graduate schools, And so again, this whole notion of being nimble and being willing to evolve becomes very important. And so that's really the first recommendation in this chapter. These are early days. We have to be prepared to evolve programs over time. We need to, in particular, not build hard walls around different areas and faculties, and we need to incentivize the faculties and the departments and colleges of our universities or schools to actually share courses, share materials, be willing to work together to actually evolve curricula and develop something out of this. And of course, to do that, we have to have faculty that don't think of themselves just as statisticians or just as computer scientists or any of those other long list of fields that is contributing, biology, chemistry, whatever, but to think about broadening the perspective of faculty so that they can take what they know about particular areas of data science and be open to the idea that there are other aspects and be able to make the connections that will allow them to more effectively educate and direct their students. So you want to finish the next bit here? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So just this just emphasizes what Laura was just saying, that institutions really need to invest resources in order to enable faculty to devote the necessary time to course development, program development, training development, summer courses, industry outreach partnerships, and so forth. And this is especially, I think, an opportunity for universities to develop very successful programs in data science that are very popular because of the fact that there is such a growing interest among students and among potential employers for students that have this very broad training. So the finding 5.3 simply points to the fact that I was referring to before, that the making available more materials from the point of view of educational research findings for data science and materials related to or that will facilitate putting together curriculum courses would benefit from creation of websites and journals. And so that's a finding that really is almost a recommendation that universities and faculty invest more in creating such venues for collaboration, sharing, partnering, and dissemination. Okay.
Okay, and the other piece of this chapter, as I said, was evaluation. I think one of the key findings in that section was that really we should be using data science to drive the evolution of the undergraduate education in data science. And we talk quite a bit and give some examples of how records that are kept normally by various academic institutions, especially linked to other data sources, can be very effective in helping evolve programs. And we think that this kind of evaluation should be, we're finding it already being applied to both individual programs and comparatively across programs, but that can be really helpful as we try to drive this undergraduate education forward. So the recommendation out of this section is to ensure that the programs are being continuously evaluated and as they evolve, as they emerge, and that we don't, again, build walls, but instead that the various levels of academic institutions, the various institutions themselves, the various colleges within universities, and so on, should work together on developing the professional approaches that are required to this evaluation, and that if we can do that, we've felt that you will really see benefits into how the education will evolve. So I'm going to turn it back over to, I know we're doing short shrift on these later ones, but Al, maybe you can wrap up on professional societies.
Yes, exactly. So this really addresses the issue of how to leverage on what is de facto the sort of the premier professional development organizations, the scholarly or professional societies like the Association for Computer Machinery, ACM, or American Statistical Association, ASA, IEEE, and others, that really are in a position to make a really big impact by making new conferences that bridge different areas between statistics, computer science, informatics, and math, and so forth, and domain sciences, but also in terms of offering networking opportunities. And in addition, professional societies are much broader, of course, than universities. They have a very, very significant representation from employers and potential employers. And so this is a really, I think, a great opportunity for national and international professional societies to help accelerate the multidisciplinary convergence of interests that I think will benefit everybody, academic, personal, students, and everyone else. So that's, I think, terminates our overview of all of the recommendations and findings. And I think, Ria, you can open it up for questions, or you can
Thank you, Dr. Hero and Dr. Haas. So we'll now open it up for questions. Apologies in advance. I see a lot of questions here, and we may not be able to get to all of them. But our first question is from Sam Donovan at University of Pittsburgh. How do you imagine disciplinary groups such as biology using this report to revise their curricula so their majors can participate in the technical workforce and interact with data scientists?
So I'm going to turn that one over to Al because he has actually worked on that cusp. So, Al, would you like to take that one?
Yes, sure. So I work with people in the chemical sciences, chemistry, chemical engineering, in trying to better integrate their curriculum with curricula in computer sciences and statistics and other areas, mathematics, because currently, there is a high bar. There's a barrier, and that barrier is due to the success of computer science and statistics, which are two of the most popular areas for people that want to major in the foundational methodological data sciences. For science or other student who are not interested perhaps in getting a general foundational education within a data science discipline, the report does have a section on minors in data science, certificates in data science, and a variety of other things like summer intensive immersive opportunities that universities can organize in concert with their departments that are science-oriented or are data rich, but say lack the capacity to offer their own course that's specialized in the data science tools that would solve problems in that particular domain and bring those tools to the attention of students. So the report does indeed address this, and I think that there's ample room to expand and to have additional discussions in this direction, but it's a good start.
Thank you, Dr. Hero. Our next question is from Michael Posner. Do you have any examples on how to successfully lobby administrators to support faculty to develop data science programs?
Well, I can start there. In my own institution, we as part of becoming a college of computing, we launched a fairly major data science program. It was launched with a major gift from industry, though, so I know this isn't always applicable to everybody, but that helped draw the attention. This was from an insurance company, MassMutual, who really desperately need data science in order to proceed, and I think that really helped. I think having these key examples from whoever your constituents are of the need for data science, and ideally having people who are willing to help put some money where their mouths are, but you can't always get that, can be very helpful. And, you know, as we launched that center, we, of course, had to start to spin up programs, both at the master's and to a lesser extent until recently undergraduate level, to start to address those. But that gift helped catalyze for us the ability to do that. Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, I can add to that, one of the things that we experienced here at the University of Michigan, which I think could be quite effective at other universities, is that the students are voting with their feet, right? And administrators are very interested in students, not only because of tuition dollars, but they're generally interested in accommodating student interests, and there's an enormous flow of interest into the data sciences. And this is demonstrated in various ways, but one of the most, I think, effective ways to demonstrate this, which we've been quite successful at here, is organizing, having faculty that are interested organize extracurricular sort of hacking or datathon types of activities where they get a lot of students that are interested in, it's not for credit. Students come in there to have fun, and they're completely overloaded. They have to turn students away. And this then led to several statewide and national level highly visible programs where the students actually went out into community and brought problem-solving skills from statistics, computer science, and other areas to solve problems that were very meaningful for people in the community. That word got back to administrators, and they can't ignore that kind of input, right? The combination of student interest and the obvious impact that those students are having, and their interest in having a curriculum that goes beyond simply learning computer science skills or statistics skills, I think led to the establishment, at least it was one of the factors, of our undergraduate data science degree.
Thank you. Our next question, possibly the last question for today, is from David Fuardi. Do you see data science courses displacing statistics courses, such as the introductory level Stat 101 or professional classes, example for like MBA students?
So I'll start, and then Al, as a statistician, will be happy to jump in, I'm sure. I will say no. I don't see them replacing them for people who have strong STEM skills and interests and who want to go on and become specialists in these degrees. I don't think statistics is going to be replaced by data science. In fact, one of the points we were trying to make it early on is that this is emerging as really a fundamentally different discipline. But I do think for a class of students broadly across the university who need some exposure to working with data, because more and more we all are being asked and challenged to do that, they may not need a basic statistics course in quite the same way if they've had, or they may be able to substitute over time these sort of introductions to data science. That's my thought and my prediction, but I'll let Al have his 2 cents.
Yeah, I share Laura's optimism that I don't think that we're going to have a wholesale replacement of courses in statistics or computer science by data science courses. But I do think that perhaps some of the courses that are offered, like in statistics, applied statistics that are fairly low level in terms of the level of understanding required, for prerequisites to enter the course, they may see a drop in enrollments for courses like that. Maybe similar in computer science for the lower level undergraduate introductions to machine learning and data mining. Perhaps there will be some reduction in the number of enrollments, but I think that's actually a good thing because it will allow the statistics and computer science departments to focus more on training students who are pushing these introductory courses into their stream in the beginning of their educational careers in order to have access and be better prepared for courses that follow on. So I think you'll actually find the statistics and computer science students will be perhaps more deeply trained because you have the students who are perhaps have more applied interests going into some of the data science courses that sort of parallel currently many of the courses that we find at the low level in statistics and computer science curricula.
Thank you. So unfortunately, it looks like that those are all the questions we have time for today. Seeing a lot of great questions here, so our study staff is going to try and follow up and try to get you some answers. And with that, I would like to thank our co-chairs and thank you all again for participating. You will receive an email after the webinar with a link to the page where the recording will be uploaded. Just a reminder, this report can be downloaded free of charge on the National Academies Press website, which is www.nap.edu. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it's 10:30. We're going to start. My name is Camila Abel. I am a Senior Program Officer with the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. I want to say welcome and thank you for attending this webinar. And I want to quickly go over our agenda. So we're going to have some opening remarks from Robin Shane. She's the Director of the Board on Agricultural and Natural Resources. And this will be followed by a presentation by Dr. Jacqueline Fletcher, Professor Emerita, Oklahoma State University,